Hi, Alex. Today, I was reading about common mistakes English learners make, and I realized how important it is to address them.
That's a great idea, Emma. Everyone makes mistakes when learning a new language. But if we know what to watch out for, it becomes much easier to improve.
Exactly. So, let's guide our viewers through some of the most common mistakes and how to avoid them.
Awesome. Let's get started with pronunciation mistakes, as they can change the meaning of words.
One of the biggest pronunciation mistakes is not stressing the right syllable in words. For example, in present as a noun, we stress the first syllable, present. But as a verb, we stress the second syllable, present.
That's a tricky one. Another common mistake is mixing up sounds that don't exist in the learner's native language. For example, confusing V and W sounds.
Oh yes, like saying fada instead of water. The tip here is to practice listening and repeating. Use tongue twisters for extra fun.
Another classic mistake is dropping the final sounds of words. For example, learners might say wall instead of wall.
That's right. Always try to pronounce the final sound clearly, especially with important endings like s for plurals.
Now let's move on to grammar mistakes. One common issue is forgetting to add the plural s at the end of words. For example, saying, I have 3 cats instead of I have 3 cats.
Yes, and the same goes for subject-verb agreement. For example, he go to school should be he goes to school.
Another mistake is confusing past tense and past participle forms. For instance, saying I have went instead of I have gone.
That's a good one, Alex. Learners should also be careful with prepositions. For example, I'm good in English should be I'm good at English.
And let's not forget articles. Many learners say I saw cats instead of I saw a cat.
Articles can be tricky. We should explain them in more detail later. Vocabulary mistakes often happen when learners translate directly from their native language. For example, saying I'm boring when they mean I'm bored.
Yes, that's a common one. Boring describes something that makes you feel bored. Saying I'm boring means you're not interesting.
Another issue is using the wrong word for formal and informal situations. For example, saying, can you give me a pen, to your boss might seem too direct. It's better to say, could you lend me a pen?
Good point. Learners should also be careful with false friends. Words that look similar in their language but mean something different in English.
Oh, like the word actual, which means real in English, not current.
Let's talk about spelling mistakes. One common error is adding unnecessary letters like writing receive instead of receive.
A helpful tip is to use spell check tools and read what you write aloud. You'll catch a lot of mistakes that way.
Punctuation is another area where learners often struggle. For example, forgetting to add a period at the end of a sentence or using commas incorrectly.
Absolutely. And remember, in English, the first word of every sentence must start with a capital letter. Idioms and expressions can be confusing, too. For instance, someone might say it's raining cats and dogs, and learners might imagine actual cats and dogs falling from the sky.
That's a fun example. Idioms don't always mean what the words say. It's important to learn them as a whole phrase.
Right. And another tip is to avoid translating idioms directly from your language. They often don't make sense in English. Let's do some practice conversations to show how these mistakes can happen.
Good idea.
Alex, what did you do yesterday?
I go to the park.
That's a common mistake. It should be, I went to the park. Remember, go is the base form, and went is the past tense.
Got it. Let's try another one. Emma, how many apples do you have?
Oops, you forgot the plural s. It's, how many apples do you have?
Thanks, Emma. This practice is really helpful.
Before we finish, let's share some tips to help our viewers avoid these mistakes.
Tip 1. Practice regularly and don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's part of learning.
Tip 2. Listen to native speakers and imitate their pronunciation and word usage.
Tip 3. Use resources like grammar books, apps, or online videos to strengthen your skills.
Tip 4. Always double-check your writing for errors.
And tip 5. Be patient with yourself. Learning a language takes time and effort.
You can do it.